But if we only walk with a big stick, we will always have resistance. So let's break down resistance so we don't need the big stick. Let's make people realize it's good to have health and safety policies, procedures, and behaviors in the workplace.
Welcome to My Safety Hub. I'm Awkward Fourie, and today we're joined by Deon Groenewald, a leading NLP trainer with more than 10,000 hours of practical experience in personal development and helping people be a better version of themselves. Happy to have you here. Thank you for accepting the invite as well. Deon, you've been working with people development, the brain. I've been in training with you as well, which I enjoyed immensely. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you located? What do you do? How do you help people? Because I know that you're very invested with helping others as well. So tell us a bit.
I think it sounds a bit cliche, but people are my passion, but more specifically, the way people think and how do we retrain people? How do we get the mind to think better, to think differently, to think more creative, to think more strategic, to think more analytical, to think more progressive, and everything focused on self-improvement. In other words, in simple English, how do we make human beings better versions of themselves than what they used to be? And that's the passion. That's been the passion now since, we're going back to the early 2000s already. I've been doing it a while, and still just loving it. It's one of the most interesting fields to understand how the brain works, relationships between your conscious, your subconscious. Why do we behave in certain ways? Why do we react? All of these questions. There's so many questions, and we don't really know that much about the brain, but we've learned more about the brain and human behavior in the last 10 years than what we have in the last 200 years. So it's been in our industry, very exciting time. So that's my passion, that's my first love at this stage of my life.
So you've racked up about 10,000 hours plus over the years as a facilitator, trainer, coach, assisting people thinking differently, like you've mentioned, but also assisting businesses to do better. And in that sense also to develop a better organizational culture. So take us a little bit into that sphere, moving away from the individual into the business world. How did you get involved there, and tell us a bit about your experience in that regard?
It started quite a few years ago. One of the larger bank groups in South Africa actually asked me to come in. They were going through quite a bit of restructuring, so the word was change management at that stage, and I started getting involved to retrain managers to manage their teams differently. So the original idea was to see can we go into a corporate where a lot of restructuring has happened, where the talk in the passages are fear-based, are very negative, of who's the next one that's going to go, what's going to happen next. Can we change the conversation in the passages? Can we change the conversations at the coffee machines? Can we change the attitude of a large group of people in an organization? So we took a small team and we call it a test run, worked fairly effectively, and we expanded it to, I think we trained probably about over 100, 150 coaches in one organization, but focused very much on bringing a large shift in the attitude of the average person in the work environment. So that gave us a very practical feedback. In number one, is it possible to change the attitude of a group of people for the betterment of the individuals and the organization? And number two, if we do something like that, will it start reflecting differently in their behaviors, people's reactions, people's responses? And that was the interesting part. So it gave us a very good sense of how long does it take, what is truly required, what does work, what is the processes required to bring in that change. And what I noticed was very simplistic. We learn through different phases. Now, if you take something as simple as learning to drive a motor vehicle, originally when you were trained to drive a motor vehicle, when someone took you for driving lessons, you had to really put in a lot of energy in your thoughts, in your physical reactions to be able to drive that motor vehicle, because it's the clutch, it's the accelerator, it's all the gears, the mirrors, it's all of this information in the brain. And it's nerve-wracking for most people in the beginning to learn to drive a motor vehicle. But after a couple of years, in fact after a couple of months, in some cases, for some people after a couple of hours, call it 10 or 20 hours, driving a motor vehicle becomes automatic. In other words, not automatic as no gear shift. It becomes automatic default behavior. So any behavior, once we learn it, once we repeat it, it can become default, it can become habitual. So if we take a group of people in an organization, we train them correctly to subtly but very specifically have an impact on those around them, it brings around a shift in behavior. Now, a lot of people talk about company culture or culture in the organization. So what is a culture really? A culture is not a thing that lives in thin air. A culture is the way people behave, the way people act, the things people say, the way people respond, the way they talk, the topics they talk about. It's the day-to-day physical interaction and behavioral patterns of everybody involved in the organization. That's what we call a culture. And usually it's very focused for a particular group outcome. So the question was raised, can we create a culture in an organization where we can improve health and safety? And the answer is absolutely yes. But there's a process involved. There has to be a very particular process over a very particular time to be able to recreate that culture. But is it possible? It's absolutely possible. We've seen it happen in many organizations. We've seen change, we've seen culture shifts, we've seen improvements in health and safety, we've seen improvements in change in attitudes. So we know it is possible. So that's an exciting opportunity for us to step into and say, well, how can we make it even better?
So you've stepped into the realm of procedure, guidelines, rules. So recently Safety Wallet and Microsoft have announced that the launch, or that they will be launching what they call the triple Ps, policies, procedures and practices, which will be made available at no charge to all Safety Wallet subscribers. In essence, it sounds something that's very simplistic. Every company should have a manner of control or organization, if you will, to make sure that the company's goals are reached. So having policies and procedures sounds like something that's, kind of run of the mill. How are these different to what you would ordinarily find in any other company? So what makes this special from the perspective of building a health and safety culture with policies, procedures and practices?
When I heard you guys develop the what you call the PPP program, I actually giggled and I liked it, because there's a concept that I talk about quite a lot about the reason that mankind has developed to the amazing level that we've developed. Now, if you look at mankind or humankind, when we get born, I want to say this, and I'm saying it with a bit of a smile, we're actually quite pathetic, because we can't feed ourselves, we can't keep ourselves warm really. We need parents or someone to take care of us for many years before we can really become to any extent, some kind of a contributing factor to society. And if you look at mankind, one should ask the question, how is it possible that that's got no great strength, no great speed, how did we get to the top of the food chain? How did mankind take control of this world? And the answer is a simple thing. The answer lies in three basic steps. Number one, We have got the ability to think brilliantly, we can think strategically, we can hypothesize, we can develop strategies. Number two, we can communicate these strategies. And number three is we can work together as a group to make these strategies manifest. Now, if you look at the Triple P, it's exactly that. It's based very much on the essence reasoning of what has made mankind control and in charge of this world. It's taking a great strategy, policy, taking a great communication, which is the documentation and the communication of these policies, taking that and then working together, which means taking these policies and putting them into procedures that are measurable, that are sustainable, that everybody can get involved in, so we can tweak, alter as we go along to improve continuously. Now, if you look at mankind, how did we put someone on the moon? We had to think about it, we had to communicate about it, and we had to put a strategy in place and work together to make it happen. How do we make a train that can move on a rail at the sound of, or at the speed of sound? We had to think about it, we had to communicate the idea, we had to work together as a team to be able to do it. And that is the secret of humankind's success. So PPP is based on that principle. And that's what I love about it. But there's a tweak, there's an added benefit, and that is PPP allows consistent improvement. Measurement and improvement. Measurement and improvement. We know if something cannot be measured, it doesn't exist in the corporate world, but it's got to be measured and it's got to be improved. And what that will do is it'll create a habitual, cultural, behavioral style in an organization. So first time I saw it, I loved it. I think it was spot on. I think if people start taking it a bit more serious and really start looking at it, starting to put in energy and effort to implement it, they will start seeing the results, and the results are going to be good.
So you've mentioned two things now that really stood out for me. The first one is strategy with regards to policies. So strategy would always directly be related to management or top management, the decision makers, the people that are in control of the budget, essentially. And the second part for me is the behavioral aspect with regards to habits, which comes in with the third P, which is practices. So if I understand it correctly, then from a strategic point of view, to create the buy-in that's necessary to change the workplace into being a safer workplace, you need the commitment of the guys at the top to sign off those policies, however many policies there may be. Then you would need someone to implement those policies through following the correct procedures, like you've mentioned, the communication part. And then we get to the habits that are being formed. So these habits, in the lesser sense or in the negative sense, they relate to the unsafe practices, unsafe acts that create unsafe conditions where people get hurt. So it's a top-down strategy from a policy perspective, but it's a bottom-up strategy from the person's perspective, the employee's perspective. How do these two then interlink to making sure that the culture changes? Because I think people throw around the word culture as if it's run-of-the-mill type of lingo that just, we're building a culture. But it isn't that simple. So from a health and safety perspective, the triple Ps are there to develop a safer workplace. And you've mentioned the fact that we need to look at control and that our parents looked after us, but essentially legislation is also there to look after us. The Health and Safety Act is there to keep us safe. It was created due to the fact that people were getting hurt. So how do we make this a reality in the workplace? So creating a culture or creating a habitual behavior has two main elements to it. So if we look at human beings, let's take something very simplistic. Let's say we take someone that decides they want to eat healthier, they want to drink more water, they want to eat more salads, and they want to lose weight. The strategy is to become healthier and to lose weight. Now, as humans, the moment we have something where we feel
it's being forced down on us, we very often have natural resistance. The second concept in there is the moment there's a strategy where we're trying or attempting to avoid something negative, we also very often create a bit of a negative attitude around it. So if someone says to me, I need to live healthy, I need to lose weight, if I don't, I'm going to be sick. That's a very negative statement. That's doing something because you're only trying to avoid something else. It's what's called an avoidance strategy. So if you take someone in the workplace, if someone finds a job because they don't want to live in poverty, that's an avoidance strategy. So usually what you find is people don't do it to a level of excellence. They do it mediocrity. They do it very basically. So if someone takes on a job because they don't want to live in poverty, they will only work hard enough not to get fired. They will never excel. They will never really live up to their full potential. If someone goes on a diet because they don't want to be overweight, then they will often cheat, and once the diet's over, they'll probably just bounce back to where they were previously. So that's what's called an avoidance strategy. The moment you create a culture based only on an avoidance strategy, you will have resistance, and in the long term, you're not going to be successful because that strategy is not sustainable. Now, in South Africa, it's law. Health and safety is a law. There's certain minimum requirements to achieve, what's the word I'm looking for?
Compliance.
Compliance, there's a word I'm looking for. Thank you. So a simple word, and sometimes it slips the brain. So we have to comply. Now, the fact that we have to comply creates an away from strategy. So people will comply just enough to comply, to get all the boxes ticked so they can pass the bar. So how do we change that? Well, quite simple. We bring in a towards strategy, a towards pleasure, a towards a positive outcome. So let me just take the two examples I used. So if someone decides I want to live healthier because I want to have more energy, I want to have more zest, I want to have more joy in life. Now the strategy to live healthier becomes more sustainable, and it increases the probability to do it excellent. If someone finds a job or enters a career path to expand their horizons, to enjoy life, to earn more, to have greater experiences, they tend to work at a different level, at a different pace, they put in more energy and more effort, and they will become better employees. That's a towards strategy. That's, I'm going to gain something out of this. Now, with health and safety, because we have an away from strategy as law for compliance, we need to bring in a very strong towards strategy. There's a benefit in it. For whom? For me, for you, for everybody combined. It's a simple thing. We naturally, instinctively want to live. If we cross a road, yes, we've been taught to look left, look right, look left, but we want to check that there's no car or bus coming. We don't want to be run over. So we do check before we cross a road. But we only really check because we understand I want to get to the other side of the road, and I want to survive this, and I want to live. So if we take that concept of my health and safety has a great benefit for me, for the rest of the people, for my family, for my children, for my parents, for my friends, for the organization I'm a part of, for the community, for the society, for the country, for smaller and greater pictures. Health and safety improves the quality of life. So if we can bring that concept in, and we bring it in strongly, and we make people over a time frame truly recognize the benefit, then it becomes a very strong towards strategy. It becomes sustainable. It becomes an easy, repeatable behavioral pattern. Then it becomes habitual. Then it becomes default. And then we've created a culture of health and safety. For whom? For the benefit of all. So is it sustainable? Yes. Is it as simplistic as I mentioned now? Of course not. Because the human brain is complex. But that's why we are in the process of developing what I believe one of the best programs in the world to make it happen.
So that's exactly where I was going now, is asking the question how. I mean, it's one thing to say that you'd like to develop health and safety aware, conscious culture in the workplace, but it's not as easy as that, because as soon as you develop a new culture, you're replacing the old one, and in the process, one could be alienating the top employees. The guys that are committed, but they probably don't see the things the same way that you're seeing it, or the same way as another company that are health and safety conscious are seeing things. So how do you create that culture while being as inclusive as possible and to not lose your top employees? Because it's inevitable that resistance is going to be there.
I think in essence we need to accept that people do want to go home after work. In other words, the core value in any organization is that they want to live in or work in an atmosphere where health and safety is the norm. I've not really met someone that says, I want to go out and hurt myself every day. I want to lose fingers. I want to lose limbs. We want to save lives and limbs, and we all want to go home. That's a fairly obvious statement. Your question was very much in the how. How do we do it? So we have the desire, and that's so much already. If we realize, if we make people aware of the fact that the desire for health and safety is there, then we can take that desire, we can build on it, and we can teach them the how. So the only real way is to impart knowledge, but not just theoretical knowledge. We have to impart skills, capabilities, processes, techniques. So in our industry, we call it coaching. So if you have a golfer and you want to improve the swing of the golfer goes sees a coach that will help him improve his swing. So he can either putt better, drive better, or play better from the fairway, whatever the case may be. So a coach takes what's already there and makes it better. So let's assume we've got the people with a passion for health and safety. So let's teach them the skills in becoming a coach. To be able to coach people, to make everybody better at creating the culture, at living a lifestyle habitually where there's improvement in the health and safety of the organization. It's the strategy is a simplistic one. The processes are there how to do it. It's merely a matter of putting that process together, developing a proper program that works, transferring that knowledge, the skill, the abilities to some of the role players, influences in the organizations. Not just one. I would say one should actually have a few people involved, so that it brings a shift in the conversations. It brings a shift in the behaviors, and you've got a group of coaches in an organization that's got part of their focus as their job function is to coach people to improve their attitude towards health and safety, to improve their natural reactions, behaviors, and responses towards health and safety. Is that something that's going to happen by just flicking a finger? No, I think the training will take a few months, and the implementation of it will take a few months. But it is in time that we slowly and progressively develop, change, and create new behavioral patterns. And therein lies the secret. If one is in too much of a hurry, we try and push it, that might even create a little bit of resistance. But if we do it at a healthy pace, we make it interesting, we make it enjoyable, we allow people to see the benefit, I think it's an easy process to follow, and it's very implementable.
I think, if you look at the coaching model from the health and safety committee's point of view, for me it makes absolute sense to make sure that the coaches that you would be training be members of that committee. So you have a mix between management, health and safety representatives, general employees essentially, working together to make sure that they're not only complying, because that's, as you mentioned now, an away from strategy, but to comply for the right reasons. for me personally, I just think the challenge lies in the fact that people are reactive by nature. So they're not necessarily proactive. So it's not an issue unless it's happened. It's not a problem until the accident's happened. We don't have to take it seriously until somebody loses a leg. We don't have to drive a forklift at the right speed until somebody gets killed. And that's a problem. That's, I think, especially in the South African context, I think South Africans are cowboys by nature to a large extent, because we've been doing things a certain way for a long time, and therefore we don't see necessarily the reason to do things differently or in a new way. How do you bridge that? How do you get that nature of taking chances unnecessarily, being negligent without even blinking an eye? How do you change that?
I think the first question is you have to ask, is it possible to change? The second question you need to ask is, are we really that negligent? So let me just reframe it a little bit. So, and I've heard this, a lot of people say this to me. People only change once something bad happens. A company will only really look at health and safety once someone breaks a leg. Well, if that's true, then people will only eat once someone dies of starvation. Now, I don't know if you know anybody particular or personally that's passed away, that's died of starvation. We know that we need to eat to be able to stay alive. And we don't wait until we are starving. We don't wait until we are screaming of hunger before we eat. We habitually eat a number of meals throughout the day. Because what we've conditioned ourselves to believe is that if I eat different meals over a time frame, over the day, then it gives me sustainable energy throughout my day. And we enjoy the sustainable energy. So what we've done is we've accepted the fact, and I'm using that word very specifically, we've accepted the fact that eating a number of meals is part of my normal life. But we were not born that way. When we were children, babies, we would wait until we're hungry, then we would scream, and someone would feed us. At some stage, this big human being wanted to change the way we eat from liquid to solids. We didn't like it originally. There was resistance. At some stage, they wanted to give us peas and vegetables and the most disgusting things that we had to put in our mouths and eat. And there was resistance. But yet, as grown-ups, it's become part of the norm. Why? Because we've experienced the benefits. Anything can be brought into the human existence as a positive, as a norm, once the benefits are truly highlighted. See, resistance comes if we force it onto people. So I'll give you a quick example. I know very few people that's never ever exceeded the speed limit. Now, nobody, I don't know, I'm not going to ask you this on camera. You don't have to say anything.
No, I might just, incriminate myself.
You might just incriminate yourself.
So
I don't know anybody who's never exceeded the speed limit. People do exceed the speed limit. But nobody's going to drive around a road and 100 meters in front of you, you see there's 150 traffic officers. Each one of them has got a camera out pointing at you, and now you're going to go, well, let me exceed the speed limit. Nobody's going to do that because you absolutely know you're going to get caught. So why do we exceed the speed limit? It's a thrill. And we'll do it when we believe we're not going to get caught, when we think we're going to get away with it. But what is the reason for doing it? It's for the thrill. It's for the pleasure. It's for the enjoyment we get out of it. Not because we're deliberately going, there's a rule, I'm going to break this rule. We do it because we believe there's a thrill. Our culture has told us, do it, it's thrill, it's exciting. So what if we condition people over time for their own benefit? And we create a culture of health and safety is great. Health and safety is enjoyable. Health and safety has so many positive spin-offs. Health and safety, having a great attitude towards health and safety, can increase the profit of the company, which in turn could increase possibly the income of the individuals in the organization. If we can increase income, we can live better quality lives. So there's a lot of reasons to look at it positively and make it a sustainable strategy. But here's what we need to understand. If we focus on the negative, if we focus on the bad behaviors, we're making the bad behaviors stronger. That's the way we as humans function. If you take a 3-year-old kid, I know you've got children, so go home and take your younger one, put a very, very ripe tomato in their hand, and then tell them, don't squeeze it. Hold your arm out, don't squeeze the tomato. Now what are they going to do? They're going to squeeze it. They're going to squeeze it because firstly, the subconscious brain doesn't understand a negative instruction. It doesn't negate. So the subconscious brain sees themselves squeezing that tomato. So their focus, their attention is now on the actual squeeze of the tomato. So what are they going to do? They're going to squeeze it. It's just a matter of time. They're going to squeeze it. Because what you've done is you've taken something you don't want them to do, you've given it energy, you've given it focus, you've created the image in their brain, and the human brain will follow it and eventually react and respond accordingly. Don't squeeze that tomato. They'll squeeze it. But if you give them the same tomato and you tell them to nurture it, to love it, to take care of it, to enjoy it, what is the image and the concept you're planting? Now, if you plant both, don't squeeze it, nurture it, you're confusing the brain. And you're giving the brain two options. But if you give it a proper instruction, nurture it, love it, take care of it, and you create that image in the subconscious mind, that's what it's going to do. In fact, if you give that tomato to a 3-year-old, they're probably going to cuddle it, they're going to hold it tenderly. But if you say, don't squeeze it, that's exactly what they're going to get. So it's how you transfer the message to the logic and to the subconscious mind. What is the benefit and the positive outcome you're going to gain from it? There lies the secret. It's how the message is transferred. Is it possible? Yes, absolutely.
Is it sustainable? Because I'm looking at the question from, let's say, an educational point of view. So as a former high school teacher, you always have an interesting mix of kids that you work with. You will always have a rebellious person or two in your classroom. You can't get away from governance and rules and structure in the sense of saying, if you do ABC, it will result in EFG. So you can't really have the nice all the time, can you?
I don't know.
How sustainable is that?
Let me ask you this question.
I mean, the rules are there for a reason.
Sure. Let me ask you this question. How many times a week do you shower?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
And you put on clothes?
Every day. Hopefully.
Every day?
Hopefully.
When you go out in public, you dress up?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I have to.
Sorry?
Because I have to.
Okay. So there's a rule. You have to. You have to shower, you have to get dressed. Okay. Where's that rule written?
Well, it's common law. I mean, you can't go out in public nude, can you?
I don't know.
I suppose you can. It'll be frowned upon and you'll probably get arrested.
Would you be able to keep your job if you do? let's say you stop showering completely. You don't bath, you don't shower, you absolutely just you don't brush your teeth, you don't comb your hair, and you become extremely unhygienic.
Would I keep my job?
Would you be able to still be employed?
Possibly, but not likely.
Possibly, but not likely. If you do it for a couple of months, would you probably be asked not to come to the office again? you have to now work from home.
Most likely.
All right. Most likely. And you married your children, would that affect them?
Well, they would probably start doing the same thing.
They'll probably start doing the same thing. Okay. Would that be very good for the family?
No.
For your hygiene, for your health? Is there a possibility you might get sick from it?
Well, my wife's a lawyer, so I think...
Your wife's a lawyer. I can imagine her standing in court.
So you can understand where this is going to go very quickly. Yes.
Okay. All right. So she's a lawyer. All right. The divorce will be evident. So are you doing it because you're scared of all the rules? Are you showering and getting dressed because through the years you've actually started to enjoy it? You've actually seen the benefits. And you don't even think about it anymore. You don't wake up in the morning going, I have to shower today. Oh no, I don't really want to, but let me just go and do this because otherwise I'm going to lose my job. Oh my goodness, I'd have to get dressed as well. All right, I'll just put on my worst clothes just so the boss can look at me and say, okay, well, at least he's dressed. Is that the attitude you do? You don't even think about it anymore. You do it automatically. Now, you weren't born with a habit of taking a bath and getting dressed. In fact, not too long ago, mankind didn't take a bath or a shower once a day. Most of us were lucky if we did it once a month. This is something that's actually quite new in our culture. This is a learned behavior that originally, trust me, created resistance. But because it was done continuously and people started experiencing the benefit of it, they started doing it without thinking. It became the norm. Taking a shower or a bath and getting dressed is part of our culture. Dressing in clean clothes every day is part of our culture. But this is a new culture for humanity. But how did we make it happen? We all worked together. Was there resistance? Absolutely. Were there few people that resisted in the beginning? Absolutely. Some of them resisted very strongly. Some cultures looked at other cultures and laughed. Look at these people, they bath once a month. And eventually once a week, and eventually once a day. They are so weird. They're washing all the natural oils off their bodies. There must be something wrong with them. But today it's the norm. Is there resistance? No. Why am I explaining this? It's quite simple. Mankind is brilliant at changing. Mankind is brilliant at learning. Mankind is brilliant at developing new behaviors and cultures. Can we? We can.
If we decide to.
When we decide to.
If we decide to. Because that movement from being consciously incapable or incompetent,
yes,
towards being unconsciously competent in terms of health and safety, that's where there's a decision lies, or where a decision is that needs to be made, and that's not a decision that everybody wants to make, especially not with health and safety.
Yeah.
It's a great purchase. It's, for many companies, it's worth less than 7% of their budget. So crossing that bridge, I think, is a real challenge. But in the triple Ps then, if I'm hearing you correctly, the conditioning that takes place with repeating the practices again and again and again, whilst influencing the individual with proper coaching and mentoring, is where the magic happens.
It's an interesting concept that we need to be, I think, aware of, and that is, people do have some level of resistance. But here's an interesting concept. Let's look at something as simplistic as brushing your teeth. Now, if you've got a small kid in the house, again, I like using the reference from small children, because if we refer to small children and how we develop into grown-ups, we can very often make a comparison and realize how much we can actually learn, change, develop, and grow. So if you take a small child, you've got to tell a kid in the beginning, go brush your teeth. Go brush your teeth. And it's, oh man, there's resistance. You know you've got small children.
Every morning.
And then sometimes they go brush their teeth. You say, did you brush your teeth? And they say, yes, I did. Did you brush all of them? Aww. And they've got to go back again. So, because they take the shortcut. But at some stage in our lives, nobody needs to tell us to go brush our teeth. In fact, we grow up and eventually we have children and we say, go brush your teeth. And they say, but why? It's good for you. Because we ourselves have gone from, I'm resisting this, to, this is good for me. Not only am I going to do it, I'm going to do it well. I'm not just going to use the same old toothbrush. I'm actually going to go buy an electric one or a fancy one. I'm going to buy one that squirts water in between. I can floss. I'm going to do all these fancy things. Why? Because I've started to experience the benefit. Logically, I didn't grasp it at a certain stage in my life. But because I started doing the behavior habitually, it became the norm. I started seeing the benefit. I started not just doing it regularly, I started improving the way I do it. And I started to teach others to do it. Humans always go through change. We're not the same that we were 5 years, 10 years ago. Each one of us always going through change. We don't speak the same way we did 10, 15 years ago. We don't even walk the same way. Yes, there's similarities, but we are always going through change. Anything that's alive is always going through change. Life equals growth, development, and change. So why not just focus the change towards something that benefits and suits us? And that's what coaching does. Coaching takes someone with potential, with sometimes even a subtle desire to change and improve, and increases the desire, increases the passion, increases the ability, hones, focuses, develops the change. That's what we do. So can we do it in groups? Absolutely. Can we do it in large organizations? Absolutely. Can we do it in large cultures? Yes, we can. But we need to start somewhere first. It's one thing having desires and talking about it. Having the desire and just talking about it, it's not going to bring change. But that's where we start. And that's what we're doing now. There's a desire and we are talking about it. But there needs to be action. There needs to be a process. There needs to be a strategy that's implemented by how many people? Enough so we can start causing a critical change and a shift in the masses. Will it take time? Yes. How long? Nobody knows. But it's not going to take years. We are talking about bringing change into an organization in a matter of months, possibly a year, maybe 2 at the most. So your ideal time frame to develop a proper habit. I don't know, a lot of people say it takes 21 days. It doesn't take 21 days to develop a habit. It takes 21 days to break a habit.
Yes.
But it takes up to 18 months sometimes to install a proper habit.
Or to replace one.
Not to replace one, to install a good one. So even if you've got a bad habit, if you install a good habit next to it, and you give the good habit more attention, more time, more focus, you hone it, you improve it, it eventually starts to overwhelm the bad habit. You're a golfer and you know this. Sometimes when you play golf, there's a certain element that comes into your swing that doesn't allow you to hit the ball perfectly. And that element is merely a movement habit. So how do you get rid of it? Well, what you do is you decide what do you want to do in its place. What type of swing do you want? And now you start practicing the new swing. You don't unpractice the old one. The old one's there, it's installed. But because the new one is getting all the attention, because the new one is getting all the focus, because the new one is now being repeated, eventually the new one grows so strong it dissolves the old one. The old one dissipates, goes away magically. That's the way we as humans develop. That's how we improve ourselves. Not by trying to not swing badly, but by learning how to swing well. Health and safety culture is not only by don't do that, stop doing that. It is about let's adopt this attitude, let's adopt this behavior, let's repeat this process. Let this one become so strong it overwhelms the negative, overwhelms the others. It becomes the default. That's how we create culture.
So I think my final question then is focused on the enforcement of the triple Ps. Governance requires enforcement.
Yes.
Without enforcement, to make sure that the rules are followed, there will be a complete breakdown of structure. I mean, the entire purpose of the organization goes out the window. Makes no sense. How does one then balance the enforcement, which is the stick, with the carrot, which is the reward, in changing the way that I do my work? How do you balance the two?
I don't think you should balance. I think you should decide which strategy you want to follow. So if you're going to follow the stick strategy, and only the stick strategy, then your stick needs to be big. And you need to be prepared to use it a lot. Where if you decide to balance things out and say, well, let's bring in a carrot as well. If you give the carrot more attention, then you'll require less stick. So let's put it into a different context. Society generally functions because we have rules. We have laws. Every country, every society is governed by certain laws. It's these laws that gives us freedom. A lot of people think laws bring resistance. But laws tells you what you are not allowed to do. But they also tell you what you are allowed to do. So, and that's not a restriction. Knowing what's not good and what is good is freedom. Because it tells you where can you move, how can you move, what can you do, and how you can function. So it allows the mind to function within that framework. Now, health and safety, yes, I know health and safety is a law. But so is not stealing. And most of us don't steal because it's aligned with our personal values. We understand the benefits as a society. If we're just going to steal things from each other, we're going to struggle as a society. We have experienced the benefit of the law. We have experienced the freedom the law gives, because now I know I can purchase certain items and I can keep it for a while. I know I can buy a cell phone and I can own it for many years. That's freedom, that's benefit. But if there was no law against theft, no law, anybody at any time could steal my cell phone, for example, because there's no law protecting it. Would that create a restriction? Yes. So the law actually gives me freedom. If one looks at health and safety and the law of health and safety in the same way, it's not a restrictive law. It's a law that allows us to go home. It's a law that saves lives and limbs and allows us to function better. In fact, if you look at any organization, health and safety improves productivity. It assists you to sustain your skilled workforce. If you had no health and safety, a highly skilled person would not want to work in your organization. They would leave. They would go somewhere where they feel safe and protected. So there's a financial benefit for health and safety. There's a freedom benefit for health and safety. And if we focus on that and we realize the benefit and we start talking about the benefit, it will increase and there will be a bigger awareness. And people start to act and react differently. And that's where we want to go. So if we can get a group of people in any organization and we train them to be aware, we train them to observe, we train them to communicate correctly, we train them to consistently bring the right message across, to tweak consistently, then we can expect the shift and the movement of change. Then we can expect the culture to develop in the right direction. But if we only walk with a big stick, we will always have resistance. So let's break down resistance so we don't need the big stick. Let's make people realize it's good to have health and safety policies, procedures, and behaviors in the workplace. It benefits everybody.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. Deon, I'm definitely will be extending an invitation again to you so that we can explore this a little bit further. Good luck with the development of the course that you're working on, focused on the triple Ps and the culture development from a health and safety perspective. I'm looking forward to a little bit more exposure on the material. So when you're ready, obviously, I'd like to discuss that with you.
Been my absolute pleasure. You know my passion and my heart beats for health and safety as well. So it's really been a privilege and an honor to be here. So I'll most certainly return if you invite. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.